Thank you all for showing up. The turnout's excellent. Maybe it's because it's the first day and nobody's had any late night receptions yet. So nonetheless, happy to see you here, and I hope I can help you kick your RSA experience off correctly. My name's Chris Burkhardt. I'm Accenture's global CISO. I've been at Accenture for the better part of 30 years, and half that time I've been doing either internal IT or our information security. So today I want to talk with you about what I think is exciting. It's security, right? So there's kind of a ceiling on that, but I think it's pretty good. And it's really about going passwordless and what that means. And I want to share our experience with you. I think this is maybe one of the most important advances we've seen in identity, probably the most, maybe the most important advance since ID providers and single directories. It's a big deal. You're starting to see it now with passkeys and some other things. So I want to share our experience and what that looks like. So here's what we're going to talk about today. I'm going to talk about the case for going passwordless, and I'm going to share with you what our journey looked like. This is not going to be super technical, but there's going to be some technical to it. But I'm also going to talk about the change management, the organization, and kind of the land war that we had to go through to get this done. And I think for all of you, this will be a little bit of an easier journey. The technology is now there. It's more a matter of execution. So let's talk a little bit about security. So look, we all have a lot on our minds. We all have a lot of security topics that we deal with. I'm sure all of you are thinking about things like zero trust, AI, deepfakes, cloud security, software as a service, security, all those different things, which is great. And you have room on your iceberg for all those things because that's what you do. But we also have our users, and we ask a lot of them. We ask, hey, you need to do multi-factor auth. You need to do mobile device management. We want you to make sure that you put the right labels on your documents so they can have their information rights protected, all those types of things. It's a lot. We kind of take and never give. There's not too many cases in security where we make life better for our users. And so I'm excited about this because, unlike a bad relationship, this is kind of a place where we can turn it around and we can make it good for our users. It's probably the first time in a long time since maybe single sign-on where security interests and usability really aligned around IDs, which is great. So when we think about it, one of the things that our users probably hate the most that we ask them to do is manage their passwords. We have all sorts of rules around it. Rules about complexity, rules about frequency, and these are all supports that were created because when we first started with passwords, 40, 50 years ago, we didn't have to worry about people attacking us as much as we do today. There were not computers that had power to crack passwords. We didn't have rainbow tables, all those types of things that we've all had to deal with for years. And it hasn't been a great experience for users because we've just sort of propped up this bad password thing. We propped it up with these complexity requirements. You got to have numbers, you got to have exclamation points or punctuation marks, whatever in your passwords. They've got to be a certain length. Now we check to see if your passwords are part of a breach, right? Because, God forbid you tried to use the same password on a couple of different sites and one of those was breached. Now your password's on the dark web. And so we've propped that up with password managers and password generators in those password managers. So I won't call it a house of cards, but it's certainly not user-friendly. And it leads to a lot of risk. You can see, I won't try to read all this to you, but passwords are not great in today's world. So there's a good reason, security-wise, to get off them. And it makes users' lives so much better. The other things that passwords do, and I've talked to some users about this in less of a draconian way and more of a, hey, how do you feel about this? users always feel like they're doing the wrong thing. They feel like they can't get it right. They feel like they're putting the company at risk because they're trying to do the right thing. They want to be good citizens, but it's challenging. I also know, as I'm sure you guys do, and I'm sure our users know, a lot of times in corporations, we have this sort of password rotation requirement. Every 90 days or so, 75 days, and you know what users do. They put a 1 on the end of their password, and then the next time it's a 2, right? And they sort of pretend that I don't know this, I know this, you guys all know this, right? And so it's not a great security proposition. So there's lots of good reasons here to get off passwords. So more specifically, I want to call out 3 of them. Phishing resistance. So if you don't have a password, you can't be phished, right? It's impossible. So that's probably reason enough. Second, you still have that dual layer of security, something you know or something you have. It could be your face or it could be your PIN code, and then a device you have that PIN code lives on. And then finally, there's reduced risk from other attack vectors. So whether it's a password spray, sites that have been attacked and now your password's on the dark web, like I mentioned before. So all sorts of reasons to get rid of them. And there's benefits for the users. So for the users, it's just a better experience, right? So they get to choose kind of one PIN code, and we don't ask them to change it because it is local to their device. It never goes across the network. It's less maintenance, right? They don't have to think about, we don't have to remind them to change it. We don't have to chase them down when they don't or lock them out or any of that kind of thing. So easier for everybody. And there's actually cost savings. That cost savings can come in a couple of ways. There's potentially a little bit of help desk savings, but also for many companies, if they're going to a cloud identity provider, you get to get rid of some on-prem infrastructure, right? Which is a savings. So these are the reasons, right? And this is the use case for going passwordless. So I want to just talk a little bit about what passwordless means. For those of you who are maybe new to the topic, passwordless really is about unlocking a secret key that lives on a device, right? That's at its very heart, that's what it is. The easiest way I can describe it is I'm going to use Windows Hello for Business as an example. So in Windows Hello for Business, there's a secret key. It's protected by TPM, lives on the device, and you as a user have a choice of how to unlock it. You can unlock it with a PIN code, you can unlock it with your face, you can unlock it with your fingerprint. And all those are legitimate methods, and your face, your PIN code, and your fingerprint only work on that device. And that secret is what's used to create eventually the session token that gets you access to all of the corporate accounts, right? That's how the magic works. So the secret that you know as a user, your PIN code or your finger or your face, is never transmitted over the network, right? And it's just a great experience for you. You open up your laptop, you're logged in because it sees your face, and off you go. The other ways, some other examples just to share, right? You can do it on a mobile device as well. I'll speak a little bit about how that works later on, or a FIDO2 token. So all these are, simple ways to go passwordless. So to be clear, the key here is the secret that that you type in never transverses the network. Okay. So that's the case for going passwordless and a little bit about how it works. So now I want to share Accenture's journey and how we did it. So I'm going to share a little bit about Accenture. About 90, just again, to give you a little background so you can understand how we did it, understand how it applies to us, and then maybe how it applies to you. So at Accenture, about 96%, 97% of our workloads run in the cloud. So we're very cloud-centric now. We started our journey probably 10 years ago, and we've had good success with it. We already require strong auth. we do require that all of our apps, and I'll admit that we're not always perfect with this, especially when acquisitions are newer, but we require all of our apps to be strong auth, right? We've got to have MFA. We've built that. We have a framework for it. All that is kind of set up. We spend a lot of time hardening our attack surface, and I mean that for our infrastructure, whether it's cloud native or infrastructure as a service, or even software as a service, right? We spend time making sure that that's hardened and that access rights are managed appropriately and all that. So a lot of zero trust principles for us. I'm going to try to only say that word once. And we also have very little tech behind a VPN. So most users, most days, log in directly over the internet, over HTTPS, to an application. That's how we work. We have the stuff that sits behind a VPN is generally part of more of a control plane type stuff, not everyday users. So this has been a long journey for us, and I'm going to share a few different journey slides. I'm just going to start with the big rocks here, again, to give you a little bit more background. In 2016, we went to Entra. At the time, it was Azure AD. We did this. We were ADFS. We went to Entra ID because we knew we wanted to be in the cloud. We wanted to take advantage of the services that were there. We knew Microsoft was going to continue to invest in it, and we knew that was the future. So we went to Entra ID. That was a big step for us. Another big thing that we did this earlier, but I'll mention it. We have, and I don't think it's as important anymore. I think there are solutions that get around it. But for us, we have a single AD. So Accenture has one AD, everybody's part of it, all the workstations are joined to it. That's how we work, which makes this a little bit more of a manageable problem. Again, I think some of the newer products will let you kind of cross those, but that works well for us. The other thing I want to mention here is Windows 10 and Hello for Business. Those were both big steps for us. We stay very modern on our workstations. That's part of our security plan, is to stay up to date. In Windows 10 and the Hello for Business built into it, that really is what opened the door, I'll say, for us to get there. So we had some of this good background. The tech came along, and we were ready to start with it. So I'm going to zoom in. A little bit here on the core passwordless stuff. So there's three things that we felt we had to get right to make passwordless work at Accenture. The first thing is the device mix. We needed to make sure that all of our employees could authenticate. So we needed to make sure that either the workstation they used supported it, or they had another device that would support it, be that a phone or a FIDO key or some other trick. We needed to make sure that our applications were going to work. We wanted to know that we have a lot of applications, and we needed to understand what those applications were, configure them properly, upgrade them, do whatever we needed to do to make them compatible. And then finally, we needed to get onto Azure AD, get that configured right, make sure that we updated our app onboarding processes. So those were for us. Those were, I'll say, the three big rocks. The device mix, I'll touch on first. The applications were a challenge. I'll speak a little bit about that, and then we'll talk about the last bits as well. So our journey, if we zoom in on that section, this is what our journey really entailed. We did a couple things at the same time. First, we started remediating apps, right? So we have, like I said, we have a lot. We had to remediate those. So that involved, templates. It involved a lot of education. It involved inventory. So we had to do that. We also, at the same time, had to make sure that the passwordless methods were going to work and start enrolling our people. So once we got through those two big steps, then we got to the nice orange part of the slide where we start to move people over to passwordless and actually eliminate their passwords. And we are, right now, just to kind of give you the headline, we're about 75 to 80% through. So 80% of our people now don't have a password. So this works. They do it every day. They log in. It's not vaporware. We're there. The people who don't, I'll talk about some of the exceptions and why we're not at 100% yet, which it's always the last 20% that's the challenge. Everybody in this room knows that. So let's talk first of those areas. Let's talk about the device mix. So we use really three main methods of authentication. Hello for Business remains our main one. It's straightforward. It's kind of the best experience for people. When you start your day, you open your laptop, you log into your laptop, and that automatically issues you your token. You're logged into any Accenture application you want to go to, right? It's straightforward as that. There's no passwords you got to type in later, no nothing. So it's just a wonderful user experience, and it's our users frankly they love it. The second approach that we use is Microsoft Authenticator, and we use on Microsoft Authenticator what's called phone sign-in. So the way this works, if you don't have Hello for Business, the first time you log into one of our single sign-on apps, you log in the first time for that day. You log in. You're prompted with a passcode. So when I say you log in, you type your email address. You're prompted with a passcode, a 2-digit code, and you type that into your phone. So you've already enrolled your phone. You've already enrolled Windows Authenticator. We know who has control of that. You type in that 2 digits. It connects the dots on the back end. Tokens issued, and you're in. And you're in. I think we have it set for 8 hours, something like that. But it's tied to that device, and that's how that works. And then the third way, and those two are our preferred ways. The reason why is there's no cost. There's no additional cost for those. We've already paid for those through Microsoft licenses. We've already paid for those through phones. The third one does have a price tag, but it's for particular use cases. So we do business for clients sometimes that involve us being in secure bays. In those secure bays, we don't allow our people to have their Accenture device or a phone or anything, right? That's just part of the contract because of the sensitive work that we're working on. And so sometimes, though, our people do need to get to Accenture apps from those secure bays as part of their work, and a FIDO2 token is how we do it. So same concept. You typically type in a PIN. Some of them now have biometrics. It unlocks the key, and you get to log in. The final piece at the bottom here, this is our temporary access pass. So this is for, generally speaking, for bootstrapping. So there's different ways that we issue those. They're time limited, and they let you perhaps enroll a device if you don't have one. If you're a new joiner at Accenture, you might use this to log in for the very first time and set up a passwordless method. So simply, again, I want to make this kind of practical and make it real for you guys. This is how it works when a user wants to actually get there and go passwordless. So we've done all this groundwork. I shared a lot of it with you. When a user, as we rolled this out to users and we converted them to passwordless, this is how it worked. The first thing, user has to set up at least 2 methods of passwordless authentication. For most users, that is, enroll in Hello for Business on their workstation and enroll Microsoft Authenticator on their phone, right? So that's kind of precondition 1. The next thing that happens when the user says, yes, I've done that, we've confirmed, yes, they've done that, we replace their AD password with 128 bits of random data. So we don't know what that is, they don't know what it is, they never have access to it, they never use it. It's just there's got to be something in AD for AD to work. The third thing that we do, and the final thing, is we mark that account. There's a called a checkbox that says smart cards required for interactive login, and we enable that on the on-prem AD. So once that happens, we sync up to Entra, and that user will never again be prompted for a password. So that's how it works. So at the end of the day, that's where we get to, and we've, as I mentioned, we put 80% of our 750,000 people through this now. So where does that lead to, right? So that leads to, if you think about authentication methods and you think about security, there is sort of this upward curving arrow that takes us from kind of bad old security to the best stuff. And so we're pretty close to best now. We've got one more step to go. There's still a case for phishing under certain conditions for the Microsoft Authenticator phone sign-in. Somebody could fake a site. Maybe conditional access wasn't set up right for an application. So we want to close that door. But you can see where many of us came from. And I'm sure you're all in your own spots along this journey. But now that we're at Hello for Business and FIDO2, when we are able to implement passkey, we'll be really all the way up there, and then we'll be about as phishing resistant as you can get. So passkey, let's just talk about that for a little bit. So passkey, probably most of you are seeing this in the consumer stuff. I think Google offers it. I think Microsoft offers it in consumer stuff. In corporate, in Entra, the way this will work is it'll be part of the, from what I understand, it'll be part of the Authenticator app, and there'll be, you'll be able to do a Bluetooth connection with it to your PC. So there is a proximity requirement, and that'll get rid of that final, hey, you have to actually type something in, that two-digit auth code. But this has been the goal, and I'm really pleased to say that we are just about there with all of our folks. It's been a big deal. I know many of our clients have been hit at various places along this continuum. Most recently, we've all seen the hacks in the news at MGM, Caesars, some of the others, the service desk attacks, right? And we've seen the phone smishing, the SMS attacks, right? And it just gets tiresome, and I want to be done with it. I'm sure you all want to be done with it, and I'm going to just advocate and evangelize for this method. Whatever provider you use, this is absolutely the way to go. So the other good part about this is, I mentioned this, but I can't overstate this enough either. Our people love this. This is great. They feel confident. They feel like they're in charge of their ID. They read and are scared about the phishing attacks, the deepfake attacks, all those. They feel really good about this. They also feel really good about the ease of this. It's lovely to not have to type in a password. It's lovely to, or not type in a password multiple times a day, or different passwords for different sites. Like, they think it's great. So most of our people use the biometrics. Some people insist on a PIN. They're just a little bit more paranoid. They don't really trust us when we say the biometrics aren't leaving the computer. And maybe they're right to not trust us, I don't know, right? Maybe we'll read about some TPM hack in the future, but nonetheless, most of our people love the biometrics and they just use it. Let's move on. Let's talk a little bit about applications and some of the challenges we face, because most of them were in applications. Really three main areas. Discovery. This is a big challenge, I think, for a lot of companies. Where are all my apps, right? What about my shadow IT? How do I make sure everything's going to work under this new regime? Application compatibility, right? You have to make sure that all those apps work. That takes some time. You've got to reconfigure them all. You got to test them. It's an effort. That's the ground war I was referring to. And then finally, legacy apps. What are you going to do with the applications that just don't work? And what are some strategies for dealing with those? We kind of hit on device compatibility. I think I'll mention that later. For us, staying up to date on latest OSs, latest products was kind of an automatic solution for us. That's not for everybody. Some people will have to plan this, right? You'll have to really think about what your workstation and phone upgrade strategy might look like. So let's hit application, there we go, discovery. This is what it looks like. So you got to find all the apps. And this breaks down, and it broke down for us into a couple of camps. It broke down into our inventory. For a lot of years, we started maintaining an inventory, and it's pretty good. It's all of our core enterprise apps. We know a lot of things about those. We capture a lot of attributes. It helped us standardize on authentication architecture. It helped us standardize in a lot of ways. So I'd advocate for this regardless. Like, it's a valuable tool to have to understand how your apps work and what all, how they're all made. The second piece, though, I think for finding apps that helped a lot was all of the log analytics, frankly. This was more challenging than you think with AD. It took us a while to get this right and to really figure out how to best capture all the analytics and understand which apps were going to be compatible, which apps already were compatible, et cetera, et cetera. But it's going to take some time, and it's important to do because that's going to capture all of your shadow IT, right? So that's going to capture all those people who whipped out their credit card and did some SAML integration with a SaaS tool, built their own departmental tools, right? All of that, because that really happens. None of us live in nirvana, so you need to make sure those guys work. Yeah, and so for us, just to give you sort of a sense of time here, we had about 13,000 configurations that we had to fix. So fix is the wrong word, that we had to upgrade, that we had to make ready for passwordless. That took us about 3 years to do. The way that we went about it, along with the application discovery, is, of course, we created tools and templates, right? We didn't have a central team do it all. We worked through a governed process with some funding and with some operations dollars, and really gave these guys the tools to do their upgrade. Helped them along, a lot of support. Most of these, having said that, most of these were small changes. Most of them, in speaking with my team, most of these took between 3 to 5 days of work, right? And that includes testing. But of course, there were some outliers that were quite challenging, that were complex to do, and I'll speak about a few of those in the coming slide. But most of them were pretty quick. It was really about setting up SAML, testing, making sure that we caught all the use cases, and all that. I mean, it was not. To say it was like technically challenging broadly is not true. It was programmatically challenging, like just getting people to do it all and making sure it was done on time, and done kind of within a reasonable budget. So we did have some challenges. And those challenges really kind of broke down into a couple of areas. There are some legacy business applications. These are old applications, but we relied on them. They had some business logic in them that was difficult to replace. And we had a few infrastructure apps. One of the infrastructure apps, we had an RBAC solution for our office networks, and it did not support and would never support this kind of passwordless approach. It required users to type in passwords, so that was never going to work. So we had to upgrade that. We moved to a certificate-based version of RBAC, which works great. Some of the, we had this legacy app. There's an example here. We are still using SQL Server reporting services for some work, and we were able to work around that with an app proxy in something called Kerberos Constrained Delegation. If you have a question on that, see me at the bar. But we were able to solve that again with tech. And there were a couple applications we couldn't solve, and we chose to retire those and upgrade those to more modern versions. I do want to mention also, there are some cases that on this slide I say they'll never be passwordless. Maybe I was just being pessimistic, I'm not sure. But it's going to be a while before we get these solved. And these are not as critical. So, non-interactive logins, right? We're always going to have some of those. We're always going to have some machine-to-machine logins. That's going to happen. We do maintain, I said we had one big directory, and that is true. But we also have secondary directories for some applications, particularly things that we use for client delivery and have clients in them. And so those are not going to be passwordless in the near future, but they probably will be passwordless in the medium future as this gets easier and it becomes just more part of the grain of IT security. And then finally, there's some IT admin cases that just don't work well yet with passwordless. Again, someday, but those people already have lots of security penguins roosting on their icebergs and they're comfortable with it, like we can trust them, like they're not going to make dumb mistakes. So I worry a little bit less about those. They're still on my mind, but we're not there yet. Some of the tooling that we use. So I want to call out kind of two areas of tooling that we did, I think that were important. And these helped us a lot. The first one is this self-service concept. So we enabled users to kind of tell us when they were ready or tell us they needed to go back, they needed to reverse out of passwordless because they had some app during our hybrid period that wasn't passwordless yet. They didn't realize they needed access to it, so they were able to back out. And so that, this was a big deal. It saved our help desk a lot of work. We also offer self-service. I mentioned those temporary access passcodes. We offer self-service for those. You have to have another method, like we make sure that those are secure and the service desk is all over it. But nonetheless, self-service for most of it was a big deal. And it wasn't just a big deal because it eased the burden on the tech teams. It gave the users agency. They felt like they were in charge of when they converted. When you think about users, this is probably it doesn't seem like a big deal to type in your passwords, but as I talked about before, people get nervous about it. So giving them some agency and some control over what they were doing was important for us. The other tool that we used was this dashboard. And so we use this dashboard to really keep track of our rollout. We could keep track of user readiness. We could keep track of actual user conversions. Just instrumenting this so we could understand how far along in the process we were, understand where we were struggling, and put more resources on that particular area, whether it's change, whether it's individual countries that were struggling with this, what have you. The instrumentation, I think, was key, and we did this very early on in the program. We did this before we started the rollout, so we were ready to really monitor and measure. I think that led to a lot of comfort for me, a lot of comfort for our CIO, to see where we are in our journey, how are we doing, are we going to get the benefit for this, what do we need to do to push users along. So this is, I guess, like any big rollout, that this is important. Speaking of rollouts, I do want to mention one thing, just so nobody thinks that we did this in a big bang. I don't think anybody does, but I'll just say it because we're 750,000 people, right? So for us, we always crawl, walk, run. So we always pilot, with maybe 100 people, friends and family, understand, POC. Then we pilot with maybe, our pilots are like 1,000 to 5,000 people. I know that seems like a lot, but for us, it's a relatively small percentage that are representative. And then we roll out. So for us, I just want to emphasize that as well. I didn't really say that out loud before, but I think everybody in this room should know we did not try to do this as a big bang. We didn't get 5 people on and say, okay, let's go. We made sure that it was going to work, that our support processes could support it, that the help desk was ready if we needed, all of those types of things that are important to do in large rollouts. All right. So speaking of rollout, let's talk about change a little bit. So our organization needed some messaging, and we really wanted to talk to them about this because it is a unique concept. I don't love the name passwordless, but that seems to be what the industry has adopted. It kind of makes people nervous. So we needed to share with our organization, hey, here's how you're going to talk to our clients about this, right? They're going to be concerned about it. So you need to understand how it works. Here's the messaging. Here's how that works. We needed to make sure that we had a good change network of people. So in our different deployed to entities at Accenture, we had experts and advocates for how this was going to work. We also wanted those metrics I showed you. We also shared those. Those weren't just for my team. We shared those with other teams so they could see progress and understand that other people were doing this, and it wasn't just them. Probably the final thing I'll point out on this slide is really the security benefits. So not only did we want to make our clients comfortable with this, we wanted to make our people comfortable with this, and part of that is really educating them on the benefits of it. So that was a big deal as well. Like, hey, this is better. Here's how it works. No secrets are transmitted. Everybody's safer. The other part of change, and I'm moving along here, so we're going to take questions in about 5 minutes. The other part about change is the individual. So we needed to make them comfortable. We needed to make them less nervous. They needed to understand that passwordless was not only easier for them, it was also safer. The first time you use it, it doesn't really feel safer. But when somebody actually walks you through and you can see how it works, you understand how it is, in fact, safer. We wanted to talk to them about the strength of it. Oops. There we go, sorry. We wanted to talk with them about the strength of it, right? So coexistence, a lot of people did have to go back and forth. We told them that might be a possibility depending on apps they use, so they weren't surprised when it happened and they weren't disappointed when it happened. We talked to them about access loss, so we wanted to make sure that they understood that they had a place to go, that the help desk was ready to help them. If they did lose access, they could easily call up and make it happen. All of these led to comfort and led to more adoption. The people who are remaining, by the way, fit into one of two categories. Either they're in a case that really does require passwords, or we haven't yet done enough to make them comfortable. So, there is still some of that, and we're working on it. At some point, we'll have to twist our arms a little harder, but that's where we are today. Okay, some learnings for you guys. Here are the hard parts. Finding all your apps. So understanding where they are, understanding how to make them compatible, and executing that effort. I spoke to you a little bit about that. We just now, for example, figured out how we can do remote desktop using passwordless, right? So that's been a journey. We talked about the Wi-Fi and making that work, but that is a challenge. You got to have a hybrid phase, right? You got to have time where some people are passwordless, some people still have passwords, and that's okay. You can't do it any other way. At least not in our environment. You can't do that big cutover. You have to allow time and energy for legacy apps, the ones that you can't convert. You have to have a strategy for those. Your business has to be on board. You have to be able to talk with them. And then change management. This seems, this is one that I think as IT people we've gotten a lot better at in the last 15 years, but it's still important, right? It's still important to remember that we're human and people have trust issues, right? And we want to make them comfortable, and it takes some time. That messaging, it really does. Okay, the last thing I'll leave you with before questions is some things that you can apply to your organization. So sort of advice. RSA was very keen for me to give you advice, so I'm going to give you some advice. Preparing for it, right? Authentication mechanisms and workstations that support passwordless. Like, this is something you can do now, right? You can make the decision now, hey, I'm going to buy laptops that support Hello for Business. That's easy to do. You can think about, hey, for getting ready for passwordless, I'm going to think about how I'm going to do FIDO. You can think, okay, I really want to get into passkeys, so I'm going to make sure that we have a passkey infrastructure that's supportive. So there's some things you can do to plan. Adopt MFA and only allow company resources, company managed devices to connect to company resources. This does two things. One, it puts you in a better place security-wise. Hopefully you're all mostly on MFA now already, but conditional access I think is important. So not only does it make you more secure, it prepares you for passwordless because it forces you to do some of that application work up front. It forces you to get some of that inventory in. It forces you to really think about what your application authentication landscape is going to look like. And then the third thing is really, understand what your organization looks like in terms of authentication. Maybe you've got 26 active directories, right? Maybe you have 3 different identity providers. So you need to understand that and start planning your roadmap to get to passwordless and to get to a cleaner authentication mechanism. And it could be there's a tool that can go across all those things and work for you. It could be there's some conversions you got to do. But until you have a strategy, right, you're not going to be able to get that done. And I hope I've given you a good case for passwordless to take to your leadership to sell it. And that'll allow you to invest in that strategy, invest in some of the change. So with that, I will stop and take questions. Thank you for your attention.
Hi, so I noticed part of your strategy is the Microsoft Authenticator on phones. So do all 700,000 of your employees use a corporate phone, or do you have a bring your own device? And then how do you lock them down or limit what applications they can put on their mobile devices?
Simple answer, we do have bring your own device. And employees have the option to enroll in MDM or MAM for the work they do on their phones.
Morning.
Yes.
On a corporate level, how did you deal with macOS to go passwordless with macOS? Do you have like some?
Yeah, so in fact, I use a Mac.
Yeah, so that's why I was
And
like.
for me, that means Windows Authenticator for now. So we expect that we're going to get support from Entra and probably Passkey in the not too distant future. But for now, that means I'm using my phone every day. I don't get the magic like flip it open and I'm in.
Okay. Thanks.
Regarding your Entra transition, most companies that can't afford Microsoft licensing to the degree that they would want, we're E3 customer. For the Entra journey, do you need P2 licensing, or do you have to go to E5 to go to this journey?
I believe, and I believe for our journey, we needed E3 and P2 licensing. So I don't know if that's the answer you wanted, but that's
No,
that's
not
the
the
answer.
answer I wanted. But
Sorry.
So do you believe the advent of passkeys, we just turned it on in our tenant, are going to kind of kill the FIDO key sort of technology?
I hope so.
Okay.
Right. I think for most cases they will. Right. I mean, my understanding, and I'm not a deep tech guy. My understanding is FIDO is kind of like a subset of what Passkey supports, and Passkey's a lot more attractive financially than FIDO tokens are. So I would love to see that happen because it's just going to make us all more secure.
Cool. Thank you.
Can you tell me how you think about multi-factor authentication specifically to the laptop itself? I mean, if you are trying to get into a business application, then possession of the laptop and knowledge of the PIN are multi-factor. But if you've
Yes.
stolen the laptop or lost it, isn't it really single factor then to get into that laptop?
You can look at it that way. We look at it as it becomes single factor, but the laptop has some native TPM, right? Is pretty resistant to brute force attacks, right? So we think it's a pretty strong system.
Thank you.
Yep.
Hi. Any tips or recommendations for secondary identities like shared accounts, break glass accounts, privileged accounts?
So I'll say what we use privileged access management for those, right? So we use a few different tools. We use some of the cloud native tools. I think we're on CyberArk. So that's how we handle those.
Okay.
And those are, I believe, single factor, and they're passwords that still work as passwords. So those would fall into that IT admin group.
Great, thank you.
Yep.
How do you deal with users of service provider organizations whose users have already an MDM and they enroll their users in, and so there's no option to essentially enroll a device and apply even a BYOD policy?
So I think you're really talking about federation.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's a deeper question. But right now, we largely address that through least privileged access, right? Like that's our focus. We say, okay, if you're coming in, we're going to count on you contractually. Here are your obligations, and here's what we're going to allow those users to do and see.
All right. Thank you very much.
Sure.
Yeah, Chris, 2 points, and maybe I'll take your thoughts. One is on, we talk about password change. So has your policy on password change now evolved to 1 year, or, I mean, still need to change a password as that's completely
No
out of the
password
picture?
change policy if you're on password list. There's no password to change. And we don't care if you keep your PIN as long as you want, because
Got it.
that PIN only goes with that device.
Okay, thanks. Second piece is on the privileged accounts. You talked about obviously them being outliers, but what's the strategy for you on your privileged accounts? Except, I mean, let's say talk
Yeah.
about applications which are not managed by your PAM systems.
So for privileged accounts, like an IT administrator's everyday admin account, yeah, we want to get those to passwordless, right? That's on the roadmap, but we're not there yet. So the strategy is to get them there. How and when, I don't have a strong answer for you.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Sure.
Hi. Were there any challenges to implement passwordless for external users? Like maybe you have like a SharePoint, like the marketing team might have a SharePoint they want to share with a
Gotcha.
partner company, and they're not a
Yeah.
part of the tenant.
So for us, we assign those people like who are regularly in our systems. We'll assign them an Accenture ID, right?
Okay.
And so they'll use that ID. It's not. That's a case where it's not a federated case. It's okay. You're a special type of user in our tenant.
Gotcha.
Yep.
Okay, thanks.
Do you have any metrics, real or anecdotal, that this approach has made your environment more secure, less phishing attacks, let's say?
Well, I'll say it this way. We have seen our share of attempted and in a few cases successful phishing attacks over SMS and over, and we've seen credential theft as well. So I can't tell you yet, I can't prove the negative yet, but like that's, those attacks aren't going to be possible anymore.
Are there less now, less compromises than before you got into
I
this
think
attack?
so. I mean, look, we're seeing a floor effect on those, right? Like we have very few of those to begin with. So ask me next year, and I'll have better data for you.
All right, thank you.
Sure.
So, for remote workforce, means due to COVID, I believe there still be some workforce which is remote. How you are managing, for remote workforce, how
Yep.
you are managing onboarding and offboarding?
So for them, they go through, they use that temporary access code. But typically, for onboarding, we bring people into our office anyways. It's rare that we onboard somebody remotely.
Okay, and for offboarding, because say even if you deactivate the user on Entra ID, still their local device will work until they return the device to the organization.
Yeah, that's right. But we also have rights management for stuff, and they're not going to be able to get into other, other asset stores and other applications. And we have a insider threat program. So we have other ways of managing and preventing asset theft.
All right, thank you.
Sure. Okay, thank you. I think I'm getting the hook.